So, hi everybody, my name's Madiha. Welcome back to the second episode of my podcast. I'm very fortunate today to be joined by some great guests, Sofia and Husna, who I'll hand over to introduce themselves. Thank you very much for your time today, ladies.
Hi, and thank you for inviting us. Yeah, so I'm Sofia. I'm the founder director of Scottish Ethnic Minority Autistics. We're based in Scotland, and I do not do very well with introductions as always. But yeah, that's about me, and you can learn more about me afterwards. I'll pass it over.
Thanks, Sophia. Yeah, it's lovely to be here. I totally understand about introductions. Uh, it's like getting a cold call. My name is Husna, and I am a primary school teacher and an artist. I'm working with SEMA, doing some art illustrations, etc. And yes, and I'm autistic and proud of it.
Oh, I forgot to add that. Yes, I'm also a teacher. I'm a secondary maths teacher. I'm autistic ADHD, so you might find me like not sitting still and fidgeting quite a lot because I just am like that. Yeah.
So in the spirit with it being Ramadan this month, I thought we'd do a sort of a podcast about Ramadan and how autistic individuals experience Ramadan. So I thought that was, it'd be a great topic to discuss with you ladies, and share, what sort of support you need and how you experience Ramadan. So if I sort of jump right into it, how do you feel about Ramadan as an autistic individual, and what parts do you enjoy? What parts are maybe a bit harder for you?
Okay, I'll go first for this one. We'll take turns, Husna, about.
Okay, sounds good.
What I like about Ramadan, it tends to be by Shaban. I always feel every year I'm crawling to Ramadan. I think it's a spiritual or just a burnout. But I don't know why, but my clock literally from Ramadan to Ramadan, my year, and it's like a reset for me. So by the time we get to Shaban, I'm literally just like the last mile is always the hardest one to get to, and I just need to, because I need that spiritual intake, that cleanse and boost, the iman boost that it gives me. For me, that's what it is, and it's just that's what helps me. It's like you're fueling up basically for the rest of the year. That's how I see it. I have a very visual representation of that in my head when I'm talking about that and how I experience that. The struggles that I have to be not the food problem at all. I could go by just with one date for iftar and one date for seri. That's not a problem. Um, it's more of the sleep disruption, because when you wake up for suhoor, it's literally impossible to go back to sleep again, and then you have to wake up and then do your normal routine for school and work and all that. So that's my biggest problem, is the sleep deprivation. And I don't know why. And I could, because these days the days are shorter, I could literally just go to sleep at 10 o'clock. I'm still up at 1 o'clock for no reason. I have no idea why. I'm still up and working because it's like that's when my brain just switches on. So like naturally I'm nocturnal. So I'm still have to do work during the day, and then the bits of sleep that I do get is disrupted. And that does have an impact on my tolerance, my moods, even sensory tolerance as well, not just tolerating other people, but just everything. It just goes down.
Yeah, I can relate to that, about that preparation mentally, spiritually before Ramadan actually arrives. And that's what I really look forward to, that whole month, knowing that I'm going to be giving myself time. It's like you have you've set that time aside that you're going to be able to actually do some reading, be able to actually just focus on it, because there'll be lots of different podcasts, etc., going on. There'll be lots of different, all these different things. So I really look forward to doing all of that and spending that amount of time. Yeah, it's just a lovely time of the year. And I think even as a child, I was that child that would be awake and I would be bouncing and trying to wake everybody else up in the household. My siblings did not appreciate me at all, and I couldn't appreciate why. I was like, come on, get up. So yes, I've always loved it. What and Yeah, I think I just get very excited about it. But this year has been harder. I told Sophia earlier I'm not able to fast due to health reasons, and that's had a huge impact on me, because usually being autistic, I'm always trying to normalize things as well and trying to make sense of why I can't fast and giving myself a hard time over it. So all of those things doesn't help your health anymore. Doesn't matter. So, but in my head, these are the things I do for Ramadan, and not being able to do one part has been the toughest part for me this year. But trying to shift my mind and go, there are many other things that we can actually still do. So yes, that's how I feel about Ramadan.
Yeah, I certainly think it's a very sort of special time of year. I know I did this year, I did some extra prep in that 2 weeks before I started to like reduce my meals, because I always struggle with the food side personally. And that really helped me sort of the 2 weeks before I reduced my meals, and then a week before I sort of spreaded out the meals. And then when I got to it, that really helped. But yeah, it's definitely a special time of year.
Yeah, not eating's never an issue for me, actually. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. It's not actually, I could probably sort of, my sahur by the middle of Ramadan usually has gone down to maybe just a couple of dates and some milk or something like that. So, and then iftar, so it's just, it's the rest of it. I'm really enjoying the whole experience. Food just almost just depletes completely. It's like, it's fine. So
yeah. Just on sort of the back of that, are there any sort of adjustments that you need to make, especially in Ramadan, to make it more enjoyable or easier for you?
I live by myself, so I think I probably naturally do that anyway, because all the preparation of food and things beforehand. So I've always got food ready in the freezer if you're coming in from work and you don't have that time, etc. So I think it's just making sure. So it's that extra preparation, but that's okay. Yeah, I'm all right with doing that. Yeah, we'll come on to the community and socializing part later. So, so I know you've got some questions prepared around that.
I think for me, before Ramadan started, 1 week beforehand, I was prepping my children, not the food, the kids. Like, you guys all better step up, right? So I've got an 18-year-old, 16-year-old, and 12-year-old, and everyone's assigned duties, right? So wee man's got the cutting the fruit. My daughter will help with the cooking or so, and the big one as well. It's like, no, and like, the housework, because I know I'm going to have less spoons. I'm going to be drained. So I need those guys to do like pitch in more so we can share the workload. And I know like the wee one, he's only 12 years old and he's also fasting, and he's a very keen faster as well, very keen. But even though it's the end of the day, I don't know, maybe I'm a horrible mother, but I'll say like, okay, I'm still getting you to cut fruit because I'm working at that time. So they know that they've got a working mom, and I'm working during the day and evening time. So I've got my lessons. So I've got them having to like help and do the prep. For me, that's just character building. So when they're older, they'll know like you just need to get on with helping your family. And what I really like is in the evenings, normally outside of Ramadan, I'm always alone in the kitchen. But during Ramadan, everyone's in the kitchen. One person's washing the dishes, the other one's cutting the veg or the fruit. And we're literally doing it all together because we all have to pull our weights. And that's the beauty of it. And I wish we could do that like for the whole year. That'd be amazing. But it's a good experience. I really, really like to have my family, my kids with me. It helps with the body doubling as well that we need. Just it gets things done so much quicker when you're chatting away, and that again, socializing with your own family in the kitchen. It's fun. That's the fun bit there. So my kids have to step up. Other thing might be, I'm not very good at this, but I need to start maybe this week onwards, next week onwards, is schedule naps. Otherwise, I'm going to burn out, man. Like last year, I think I might have scheduled some naps during the day, but because of the ADHD, and because of my work, I'm so tuned in and just so like focused that I just find it really hard to just shut the brain down. It's not easy at all. So I wish I could do that, and I hope I can. It's just more naps, and then I'm actually learning to say no as well. So when people are asking me for appointments and meetings and calls and everything to arrange stuff that's happening in April and May, and I'm actually telling them, can we do it after Ramadan, please? So I've like set myself a boundary, like woohoo, first time, right? And I'm saying no, I will see you after March, sorry. So I'm gonna have to wait till Ramadan, and then I'll schedule these meetings and calls. So that's another adjustment where I'm actually protecting my energy levels, that what I've got on right now is enough. And I can't keep saying yes, 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 because I am atrocious. And I've been told off recently about this as well. Stop saying yes to everything. You need to learn to say no. You need to rationalize what you're actually doing. So I'm doing an audit of all the things that I've spread my hands out on, typical ADHD, and I'm trying to just retract now. So that takes a bit of thought as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you touched on sort of family and the way that you work together as family. I think that's really nice that you all get together and sort of do things in the kitchen. We tend to get together as family as well. But sort of like going to community and socializing, often Ramadan involves that, family gatherings and big group gatherings. How do you feel about being in sort of big groups and crowds in Ramadan as an autistic individual? How does that, impact you and like the community gathering? I'm sure, Sophia, you do a lot of things within the community as well with the organisation, and Husna being an artist as well. There's a lot of sort of community things that you get involved in. How do you feel about that?
Shall I go first? Yeah. Okay. It's really interesting. I was thinking about it, and I think I mentioned to you before, Medea, that I used to live abroad in the Emirates. Okay, so there's a bit of a comparison about actually living, how it feels doing Ramadan when you're actually in the Emirates, where it's a country, everything's all set up around it. And it's a slower pace where I used to live as well. So, and I think that therefore, actually being involved in the community, I found a lot easier because of the pace of life I had there. There was a lot more time to process, and I didn't feel like I was ever burning out. Whereas living back in Scotland, because everybody's always busy, there's a bigger buzz, everybody's doing so many different things, I get quite overwhelmed by the pace. And it's difficult to actually, for me, certainly, I need to see people regularly in order to make that connection. If I'm not seeing people, then I lose that connection. So therefore, when we get together in family gatherings or group gatherings, I find it extremely challenging. So for me, it is about, I know that I do try to make extra efforts, or always have naturally anyway, to always keep in contact with people. And I don't think before I was diagnosed, I actually realized that's why I did it. And now I know. So I think it can be challenging, and actually more recently I have probably avoided some of those gatherings because I knew it would burn me out further, and I would probably have meltdowns. So that's been my challenge. Over to you, Sophia.
This year I was laughing with my daughter, and I'm saying that Ramadan's the time is my annual visiting of friends in the community. In our mosque we have the women's iftar every Friday, so that's 4 Fridays. I've got like 2-3 particular ladies that I'll chill out with at the mosque, and I literally only see them during Ramadan. It's like my annual visit to the mosque where I'll see everybody. I'll spend time and actually socialize with them. At the mosque we have like lectures or lessons and all that, so we don't really do have much socializing during the year. But then it's that the time between iftar and tarawih that we just chill out with each other, and it's quite cool and it's calm, and it's quiet. And it's a really nice time. I really like it actually. But I think last week I was pretty dysregulated, so I wasn't even engaging with the friends that I could engage with. So I was by myself or on my phone or on the side, and I wasn't very like verbal speaking very much. But beforehand, we as a family, we have a small family, so Alhamdulillah, we don't really have to worry too much about that. And we very much share out all the tasks and the burdens of everything. When it does come to family gatherings in general, you'll always find me in the kitchen. My daughter called me out on that one time. We had a wider family gathering, and she's like, "Why are you in the kitchen? All the grown-ups are over there chatting." And I'm like, "Nah, I'm all right. I'm happy here. It's fine." And I just realized that I'm just so unsociable, even with my own relatives. I'd rather just be in the kitchen there, just pretend I'm being useful. Well, I am actually being useful, but then having those social conversations, because the group discussion I find really, really hard. So I avoid them. I'd rather have the one-to-one in the kitchen, and I've been doing that since childhood. As I'll have one-to-one with the sister in the kitchen rather than sit in the group of the whole family. That's where I connect. And I was just thinking the other day there, I haven't spoken to my best friend who's in Glasgow, a fellow teacher, since before Ramadan. She came to my house just before, and after that I haven't even checked in with her, and I feel so guilty. So I'm the opposite. I'm the one of friends that will think about you day in, day out, lose sleep over worrying and missing you. But the whole executive function of just texting to say, hello, how are you doing? Because I know that's going to be a long conversation, and I don't know if I've got the space and time or energy to entertain a conversation at that time. But I love and dearly miss all my friends, and I just spend a lot of my energy missing them than actually talking to them. It's a weird bit of socializing, but I do love them really.
And I can totally relate to what you're saying, Sophia. I'm always in the kitchen. And always have done. And then when someone comes through, you catch up with them properly on a one-to-one basis and really get to see what's happening, and they catch up with you. Oh, I totally understand. And I don't think, this is why I love, chatting with you, because you bring things to light about myself. It's like a mirror at times, that, wow, yes, okay. This just makes total sense now as to why, we do behave the way we do at times, yes, and during Ramadan. And I understand that bit about not starting a conversation at times, because then you're worried how much time, how many of your spoons are going to get used up through that. And it's not because you don't care. You love the people to bits, but you know that it's going to just take up that bit more energy, and you need that energy. You need those spoons to put into your work or all the other things. So yeah, I get you completely. But I think that what I was saying before about living in the Emirates, I was so sociable. I would never have, and I think I've said it before. I think because I wasn't diagnosed until I came back here, actually, because I just couldn't adapt. And so, but when I was living in the Emirates, slower pace, like I said, you would never think that, because I was socializing with lots of different people, and I could be more easily in groups. I mean, I would still do all the rehearsing part, etc., before going to these events, but it didn't exhaust me the same way. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And if I can just touch on sort of, if there was something your family or the community could do to make things easier for you in Ramadan, or is there something they currently do that you'd like to share? What would that be, or what is that?
I think I think the other thing is Ramadan does provide that time for you to have those quiet times anyway, which is what I love about it. But in terms of family, I think it's what everybody wants anyway, just to be able to have that gentleness, being kind, etc., and quiet anyway, which is what a lot of autistic people actually often want. So I think, and when it is those big events, and I have had, my sisters sometimes said, or my cousins saying that, if we're going to something, do you want to come with me? And you can just sit beside me. I think those things make a big difference. Knowing that you've got like a safe space, a safe person that you don't actually feel, so they'll happily just allow you to engage them in conversation on a one-to-one basis, and you won't have to be constantly part of that bigger group. It doesn't mean but you've still attended, you've done the best you can, so it doesn't make you feel that other person.
You just made me realize that, yes, I only go to social gatherings in our community if I have either my mum, my sister, or my daughter with me. If I don't have any of them with me, I will not go. And if I have to go, I will have an anxiety attack beforehand. And it has happened. Any community gathering or outing or anything of that sort within or outside of Ramadan, I know that my mum is going to be the first one in mosque and last one out when it comes to iftars and tarawis and all that. So she's my safe person. So I know that she's there. So if I do get sensory overload, which has happened, I know she's there. So for me, stepping out to the world, I need to know that my mum, sister, or even my son as well, when I'm even going shopping or so. Again, during Ramadan, your spoons are low, and you actually are more sensitive to your sensory environment as well. So it seems like even help with going out shopping, I'll have my son with me, and we'll do it together. We'll just share the we just share the cognitive load, basically, is what it would be called, the drain on our brain to socialize or make decisions and think more carefully at what we're doing, the way we are. Having a safe person there. Otherwise, I actually don't feel safe going out my house at all, especially in gatherings. Thank you for actually bringing that to my mind there. Yeah, I don't care how old I get. I don't care. I've got an 18-year-old, right? But I need to have my mum or my sister with me for me to feel safe enough to interact and be around people.
I think for me, it's always just feeling that, what if I do something that I'm not supposed to, or say something I'm not supposed to? There's always that fear when you're with bigger groups that you're either going to share way too much information or not be, or yes, absolutely, because you've spent your life trying to be normal, whatever that be. And so I think that fear, even as an adult, I mean, I'm 54 years old, nearly 55, that still exists, and I think that Whether that'll get easier, I'm not sure, you know, but you want to be with people that make you feel that you're okay as you are. You don't have to be any different. So that's a journey I think that you go on with your family, and it just maybe just takes a bit of time. So, and I think it's just that.
I'm lucky that my family have got that now. Like even to the point where last year my mom would say like for Tarabi time, "Kana chpala, put your things in your ears." Like
All
my
right.
earbuds, and she's reminding me to put my earbuds in because it's too
Yeah.
loud. And for that, I was like, mom's journey of understanding and accepting what we are, like, half of us are autistic in our family anyway, right? So for her journey to not knowing what on earth is going on, to accepting it and helping us. She's going beyond not just accepting us, but she's actually reminding me, you're going to get dysregulated, you're going to have a reaction to these things. My family totally called me out on these things as well. Like, no, because sometimes I'm not good at looking after myself. So they'll step in. And the fact that my mum does that, not knowing that why I was such a difficult child all my life, to her now realizing this is how to stop her from being dysregulated in her own way, is just a blessing. So yeah, I'm really, really blessed that my family, what you just said there, has come on my journey with me. So that is a huge, but not everyone has that privilege.
Yeah. No, I don't think I do have that privilege because my parents passed away a long time ago. And I think having lived abroad, probably, you know, it caused some distance between siblings because you don't see each other on such a regular basis. And I think the way that they saw me over there, the person that I was, like I was saying, much more regulated on a day-to-day basis when they did come over to visit, etc. So, and when I came for visits, that, you know, would still exist for that short period of time. But then when I came back here to see me now, I think it's quite a difficult thing for them to understand. Because it's almost like I'm saying I'm a different person altogether, almost to them, that's how it feels. And they're like, no, but you're still you. You know, and I think it's a bit of a challenge for them. It's challenging for me, obviously. And you know how it is being autistic and ADHD, and then you're always thinking about others, how they perceive things, and all from all lots of different points of views, which is probably why it makes it even more, which is probably why I burn out quite often and it's not great. But yeah, so that journey is important. But I think I'm just at the beginning of that journey, you know. So any tips, I'm always open.
Finding when you're in these gatherings, having that one safe person has to be like key. Like there's one friend that I've got, I
Yeah.
know that I can be chill with her and be myself with her, who's at the mosque in Ramadan. So I know like she's my person to sit next to and chill with. Otherwise, everyone else, I know they just judge me. And I've got to the point, I think again, the advantage of being older now. Younger me, I would, if I was to go back, I'd say to younger me, it's just be you, it doesn't matter. It's like other people's judgment really do cut you. They really, really, really affect your confidence. It's just a case of everyone's going to criticize you because they just are. And I think in our community, any excuse to criticize.
I
And it's
know.
just, you know what, just being in our own little world is fine. If you're not harming other people, as long as you're not harming anybody else, you're allowed to be in your own world and do you. So me
Yeah.
sitting on the mosque last Friday, really not being able to speak or engage with anyone, just sitting on my phone. Nobody's, but no bothered. Like, why is Sofia not talking to us? Like, she comes out once a year. Nobody said that. Like, you know, oh, now she shows her face, kind of thing. Maybe back in the olden days, they might have 10 years ago, pre-COVID, maybe. But I think we've kind of changed as a society as well. Like, people don't go out as much anymore. So that's kind of helped as well. It's like a lot of people have become introverts and stuck in their houses now after COVID, and that's good. Less judgment for us.
Yeah. Did you love lockdown then, Sophia, or not?
I hated it. I think it was the change, and
Okay.
it messed with me and my family so much. It was the change of how everything was different and no control, and the normal was not normal. That really messed with me and my kids so badly.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, no, I think because I was by myself and I had just come back for a year from the Emirates before I went back out, that quiet actually matched the quiet that I was used to. It was, you know, so it was quite different. I just wondered how it affected you. Yeah.
I really like the point that you both raised about, you know, having that one person that you can go to and knowing that your family's there and needing them. I think it's really important to sort of raise that awareness, no matter how old you are. If there is a one person that really helps you, or Sophia, you said several people like your mum, your sister, it's okay. And it's not like, oh, I'm getting old, I can't really take my mum everywhere I go or when I need her. It's what works for you. And if that person's available and they understand why you need them, having that, that safe person, it's okay. I think there's a lot of sort of stigma and, oh no, you're getting older now, you need to sort of do things by yourself and
independent woman nonsense.
Yeah.
It's so sweet. My daughter really doesn't go out anywhere unfamiliar, but I was going to go to an open day at a mosque a couple of weeks ago in Glasgow, and my daughter said, I'll go for you, I'll go with you. And I'm like, that's a bit weird. You never leave the house, right? It's like, it's a drive to get you over to go shopping for something. Like, why do you want to go with me? And the reason it transpired from conversation, because she wasn't going to tell me this, was that she was going to go with me to be my safe person, because she knew I was going to go alone in a unfamiliar environment. And then when I told her, I actually know somebody, the person who invited me, I know her. So there is, I can see, there is somebody who I know, otherwise I would have went. But she wanted to be my safe person there because she knew I cannot go into an unfamiliar environment myself. I just can't. And for a 16-year-old, that's very sweet. She's like, yeah, that's how we class our people around us as our carers. She is a young carer. So she does look out for me and help me like that.
Yeah. And I think I'm only just realizing that, yeah, I think when you're younger, you don't quite understand it, when you're a child, because you think, why is somebody interfering with me? But actually, on hindsight now, how much siblings might have been trying to protect me, to keep me safe, actually. Whereas, and I think for a very long time, I thought, why were they always criticizing me? But actually, within that criticizing, I realized actually they were trying to keep me right so that they were protecting me in a sense, and I seemed like, so that I didn't seem so different, perhaps, without realizing it. They didn't have a name for it either or anything like that, but they did it instinctively.
See, now fast forward up to 2025, right? You just exactly described my two younger kids, my daughter and the little one, because he, especially during Ramadan now, he's overtired, he's overstimulated, and he stims. And I said this in a group chat, right? He's doing our head on his echolalia. Like, he just says something again and again and again, or he'll make strange noises because his vocal stimming, and he's hyper. He's also ADHD and autistic, both of them. And we're like, he's just so annoying, right? But that's him being him. And I'll tell her, this is his home. Let him regulate. That's how he's doing it. And when he's more tired, he's more hyper. And that's the Ramadan effect on him, right? But otherwise, outside of Ramadan as well, like, how do you walk? He walks like a typical autistic person. When you say you don't look autistic, you look at this kid, you can see it. It's like the way he walks, his posture, his eyes contact, his everything about him is just like, yep, you are. But she always criticizes him. I do tell her to back off because it's like too much criticism. I said, just let him be him. But what you just said there is to protect him from getting bullied, or just like acting like out of the context of where he is. And I'm opposite, and I'm like, just let him be, man, it's fine. So it's like there's a balance between the two.
I know, and it is really hard because, like I said, because I think it's only now, 30, 40 years later, whatever, I realized, or 50 years later, that I realized that actually there was a level of caring happening there. Whereas before I didn't see it that way. Because, being autistic, I think, and being an artist as well, I refuse to fit in a box. So whereas people are always trying to put you in a box, because most people probably are in it, this is who they are and what they are, and I'm constantly changing, creating all of these different things. So I think it was it must have been quite challenging for them too. So yes,
yeah, I think it's really interesting you both touched on siblings as well. I think I think I mentioned to Sophia, sort of looking at like the systems around people. We often put individuals at the center, and then sort of systems around like their family, the school, things like that when we're looking at sort of support. But who, siblings and parents, I think theoretically, who is putting sort of them at the center and looking at them individually. I was talking to a friend a few days ago, and he said that they're also out in the UAE. And he mentioned that he's got an autistic daughter, and nobody's ever asked her sort of siblings, how do you feel about things? How does life impact you? What sort of support do you need?
Yeah.
So that's really interesting. just sort of moving on to a bit of sort of like language and terminology. I know when we first met, Sophia, we spoke about sort of the different terminology and language sort of around autism and autistic individuals, and how you described. Is there any sort of, what are your views on that when autistic individuals are sort of described as disabled? How does that make you feel? Or is there any other sort of terminologies that are commonly used that you feel shouldn't be or could be perceived as negative?
Yeah, I'm quite touchy on that topic of language. I get quite emotional about this as well. Like when people say, but what does that mean by being autistic? Unfortunately, we still have this silly medical model of it being looked at as a disorder or a condition, which is not. It's not a disorder. It's not a condition. I don't need to be fixed. The whole I always talk about the fact that the whole language of being like this diagnosed brings about the taboo, brings about the fact that something is diagnosed as negative. Like that word diagnosis itself is very negative in connotations, right? So we put that in as being autistic, that's where negativity comes from. Being disabled is not wrong. It's not bad. It's not less than. You're still a very equal human being as somebody else. You bring actually more things to the table, better perspectives to the table than a non-disabled person, actually. There will be a better place if we had more disabled people making decisions, to be very honest, which would help the non-disabled people as well. It's kind of be more inclusive. So we always advocate for the fact that disabled is not a bad word. And anyone who thinks it is, they need to really rethink their internalized ableism and think about how capitalism has affected them. Because essentially, when we're not liking disabled people or the word disabled, we are pandering to colonial ideology and Nazism, to be very honest, eugenics, like the whole Asperger's, where Hans Asperger's, because that's what autistic people used to be called, was Asperger's, right? They have Asperger's syndrome. It came about from the fact that the Nazi Hans Asperger's used to kill off everyone who had learned disabilities, all the autistic people who have learned disabilities and disabled, and then the autistic people who were intellectual, or as some people call them, high functioning, which is also a load of nonsense and labels. They would be spared because they could contribute to the economy. They can bring money in. So it's like why is our worth measured in our ability to make money for the economy? That is not what humans are for. We're here for human connection. We're more than just our ability to make money. So the problem around the word disabled literally roots into capitalism, which really needs to be targeted. I think I would literally plead day in, day out with our community. Being disabled is not wrong. If you need a walking stick, use a walking stick. Doesn't matter how old you are. Don't think about how, oh, I'll look like this, I'll look like that. I walk up in the musty with my orange tints on, right? Because it's too bright at night time. I have no shame and no worry that I'm going about with like orange tinted glasses in the mosque and I'm the only one looking weird and different, because I have to do what I need to do for me. I'm not going to start thinking about what other people think about me, because they're not going to be helping me reduce my headaches afterwards or help me with a meltdown afterwards, are they? Or if I'm in bed for the next 3 days because I never looked after myself. That's what we don't understand, is that we put other people's perceptions of us before our own needs, and then we suffer. Like, why do we need to suffer? I don't understand that. So we're living in a climate in UK where the word disabled and needing support is so demonized. It's disgusting, and it's all because of the capitalism. Other things about the autism is, but yeah, the terminology is negative. Asperger's disorder condition. What I would say positively speaking is, yes, we are disabled, and people talk about the social model of disability. So I did quite a lot of that in my research, and I have issues with that as well, because people say your environment needs to be conducive for you to function, and that's true to an extent. That's fine. The counter argument to that is what me and Husna were talking about, and during Ramadan we don't feel hunger, so that not able to nourish our bodies with the vitamins and nutritions that we need, because internally we don't feel the same. Our sense is different inside. We're still disabled like that, regardless if we had a perfect surrounding around us, perfect support around us. So the social model is good, better than the medical model, but it doesn't go far enough. We are still disabled. It's not true that only our environment disables us. Our environment disables us for the best part, the most part of our life, but we are still inherently disabled. We still need support. We still need extra help, though. And I don't feel like I'm less than that. If I'm asking for that, we need to normalize that. If I think about anything else, I'll get back to you, but I think that's the main part of it.
I think I'll just add on a little bit because I agree with many things that you've just said. And I think that part about the environment, I was talking to my sister about this yesterday, and she was like, well, what would that look like when we were talking about the workplace, for example? And I said, well, actually, I don't think autistic people, okay, or anybody with any kind of disability, whatever you want to call it, are actually looking for anything apart from good practice. Because when I first started, I've been really lucky throughout my work life before, that most places I went to, you had a mentor, which is often what autistic people need. You had a good induction. There were guidelines that were actually in a file. Everything is now placed online, so you need to go find it, etc. So it's like you're just given a list of to-dos. So I think that one-to-one contact, which you used to get before when you were starting a new job, made a huge difference, and it helped you to psychologically to build an environment. It wasn't just about that physical environment being it, that is a part of it, but that psychological environment being built for you to help you, to guide you through it, made a huge difference, because then you had a firm foundation and you could actually go from there. So I think that, so I would actually say it's just very good practice. It's not that we want everyone to adapt, because in that kind of environment, by providing that kind of environment that I'm saying, actually helps everybody. It's not about just only about autistic people or those people that are disabled. So, and I think nowadays, I think a lot of people do flounder anyway, regardless of being autistic or otherwise, because they are just, in a sense, almost thrown in the deep end and they need to just go with it, you know. So I think that I just wanted to build on that environment part. But in terms of disabled, I think that sometimes autism is disabling, I would say, for people, you know, and I think that's what we need to realize, but not everybody is the same. And I think, again, it's about exploring the language that we actually use with different individuals and what actually really applies to them.
That reminds me, but not everyone is the same. It reminds me that how advocates always say autism it's a dynamic disability. So what you're talking about, how when you came back, you're completely different. Myself as well, when I worked in London, I was different. My needs were different when I came back to Scotland, when I had one child versus when I had 0 children versus when I had 3 kids, or when I was with another adult in the house, to being the only adult in the house. My needs were completely different, and also age and hormone changes and all that stuff. So yeah, it's a dynamic disability because your needs will be different. Sometimes even time of the day makes a difference. Like past 10 o'clock on it, I'm like, no, I'm done, I'm finished. I cannot communicate with anyone. I need everything dim lights and no sounds and no interaction because I don't have the brain power to talk to anybody. So like our needs are different during the day, during the seasons, during our different stages of life. It's a dynamic disability, and so we need that good practice to be more responsive to our needs rather than being a fixed kind of tick box thing.
Absolutely. And I think that, I mean, I was in management when I worked abroad. I was, in middle management in schools. So, and if people were to compare what I was when I came back here, because the environment wasn't right, my work environment, and it changed so much from what I knew, that actually it's been much more challenging for me to succeed, to get work, etc., all of those things. And it has that impact if your environment is not right.
Did you want to add something there, Sophia?
Just when you're talking about the difference between UAE or myself in London and coming back to Scotland, we're not just battling with ableism, we're also battling with racism as well, which has also taken up a lot of our energy and spoons, and our ability to fit in or look normal, because the normal looks very, very different here than it did in our previous places. And then that's also then blocking our barriers to progression and stable life.
Yeah. Just wanted to touch on, I know you both used the word spoons, and just for people that might not know what that means, can you explain what that means?
Spoons is like you've got a drawer and you've got how much usage. It's like a battery. It's an analogy, spoon theory. People can look that up. It's an analogy of how much battery power you've got or energy levels you have, and it's like each task can vary in how much spoons it requires. Like making a phone call to HMRC, for example, or the doctors. that might take a lot more spoons. And then sometimes you can also gain spoons. Like for me, when I'm sitting there teaching high maths, I'm gaining spoons. I'm gaining the energy to talk and be more lively and happy. So working, spending time with something that gives me joy will add on to my spoons. Things that will give me stress, or it will just take away from my energy levels mentally and physically, that will take away from my spoons as well. And we all have, as human beings, we all have, X amount of energy. I just think that autistic people, or even other neurodivergent people, are more sensitive to this, and we have limited capacity and limited spoons, and it gets used up differently as well. Like our hyper brains and overthinking brains. Maybe someone who doesn't have anxiety will not need to think about that. That takes a lot of energy out of you, and that obviously impacts your physical body as well.
Yeah. So this sort of flows into the next sort of bit that I want to talk about. What do you do to sort of take care of yourself during Ramadan and to feel calm and relaxed? And is there something like others around can do to be a bit more understanding to help you feel more calm and relaxed in Ramadan particularly?
I have a cheeky smile on that face because of my head. I'm like, yeah, just tell my family to go away, leave me alone.
I think I said the same thing last night to somebody. This is hard, maybe just leave me be. But you know, it isn't that. I think what we're just looking for is that opportunity just to be who we are and to have that and to be supported in that way. So if you need to go off and have a bit of quiet space, that is okay to do that, and you don't have to explain yourself. And it's just nurturing. That is what it comes down to, I think. We just need that little bit more nurturing
I
from
think
others.
in Desi families, I think it's seen as pretty offensive to say, leave me alone, I want to be by myself. It's like, no, you can't be by yourself. Like, why are you by yourself? If you're in a relationship, you've got husband and wife, and you're like constantly like giving each other time and that social interaction, and you don't want that. You just want to be alone, zero interaction. That's how we can recover from the energy that's getting out, used up. Basically, it's just respect our need just to be alone. And sometimes we don't want to even see our favorite people or communicate with our favorite people. That does not mean that we don't love them or we're being rude. It just means we need to recover. It's like putting your phone on charge, right? You need to put it to one side and stop using it for it to charge, right? I mean, if you use it while it's charging, it's not really going to get charged effectively, right? I mean, it would get charged a lot more faster if you just put it to one side and then step away. It's like that with us, right? Just step away, let us recharge by ourselves, let us be alone. It's okay. I know what we need to restructure our Desi culture in that sense. Like everything's all about family and being in each other's faces. We can probably like rethink that. That'd be nice.
And I think it's that awareness of what impact there is when you've almost used up all your spoons, how worn you are, and your sensory system. Somebody wants to just come and give you a big hug, and actually that is one of the toughest things at times, because already you're like that. Your whole system, it's like your nervous system is already freed, and for somebody to touch it, just you would burn up, probably, is what you feel. So I think it's that understanding how the sensory systems are affected as well, and why we actually, because with being autistic, you can't switch off. You are paying attention to absolutely everything going on. And I think for someone to be able to understand that is why we burn out. So too much is not just too much like everybody else, because I think this is it. It's often just normalized when you say you're burnt out, and people just say, well, yeah, everybody burns out, everybody is so different. But I think it's that understanding what is autistic burnout, and it's quite different.
There's a conference on autistic burnout in May, the 17th actually, and I'm speaking at it as well. And myself and another lady, we're talking about the whole racialized perspective of autistic burnout, and that's being Black or brown autistic people and what burnout actually feels like. Actually, when you're talking about that, autistic burnout is just something else. That's something else people need to look up as well to educate themselves what it means.
And I think in our culture, I don't think that. And the thing is, like, a family that are well educated, they have a good understanding of things. But when it comes to autism and seeing what there might be a difference, it's quite difficult for people to actually comprehend. But I think
believe.
Yeah, unfortunately. Yeah, I think whether, yeah. And that is really challenging. And I think that hurts us quite a lot not to be believed. You know, that's one of the hardest things, because sometimes I think I will not mention the A word today in this conversation, you know, because when somebody asks you how you're feeling, and that is how so you almost feel like you have to normalize. And I think that's it. Sometimes when the pressure is on and you know you need to attend something, you're working out how you're going to be normal and you cannot be yourself. But and that's why we do need protection. You know, I know I'm kind of going back a bit, but that's part of self-care and well-being as well. You know, being able to communicate that with people.
My kids know when it's in the evening time, when they want a hug from me, they need to ask first. And sometimes they will get a no. And that does not mean I don't love them. But they're quite needy, my guys. They're quite needy, especially my wee one. I think he needs a compression. He needs his hugs, and he hugs me out so much. Like he just completely needs that deep pressure, and that's his sensory needs, right? And then I'll be like, you know what, go hug your sister, right? Or your brother, you know, go hug somebody else, right? You know, but I'm just all hugged out because I just don't have that in me. But they know, like, when they're interacting with me, or do you want to ask one more question at the end of the day about school, about something, and they'll come into my room and I'll just give them daggers. Like, no. And other times I'll be like on thin ice, and I'm literally like, I'm about to blow, and I've learned to tell them this instead of just snapping, because before I would just snap, and that's not nice for them. That's a shame. And I would say, listen, I'm this close to snapping right now because I do not have the ability to communicate or engage with you. Whatever it is can wait for tomorrow. And my first question would be, is there a deadline for this? Is there urgency for this? That would be my first question. And most of the times it's not. They're just kids. And I'm just telling them my internal state, because they don't know how I feel unless I tell them, right? It's another thing that as autistic people, we just think everyone knows how we feel, right? Everyone's telepathic. My son's like that, and I'm like that. I just have this silly notion at times where I just feel like people are telepathic and they know what I'm saying and doing and feeling. And I have to learn that that's not true. I have to communicate that. So I've learned to communicate that as well. This is how I'm feeling. I'm this close to snapping. Please back off. I don't want to snap at you. Okay. And the whole asking permission if they can engage with me or hug me, if I'm okay, or even things like they'll know when, you know, have you drunk water? There'll be days 24 hours at a time I've only had one glass of water, and they've become more cautious of that. Or my daughter will come home from school and they'll be like, did you have lunch? Oh yeah, I forgot about that. You know, like you're saying about that, how do you self-care? Sometimes that's part of the disability part, is that we can't always look after ourselves, but we need our carers, our family to step in for us to help us look after ourselves.
Yeah, I think so. And I think those people are actually, I always call them my mirrors, because they reflect back to me how I'm actually feeling, or something, or even look like, and they pick up those things, you know, and I haven't noticed, like you're saying, do you know what I mean? And go, oh, right, okay, because I'm not aware at all at times, you know, and I'm just moving on with what needs to be done. I think the other side of things is self-care and well-being, trying not to give yourself a hard time. I think as autistics, we often, because besides anything else, we're loyal, we're perfectionists, there's so many different things. And I mean, one of the things, just think about sensory stuff. I mean, doing Wudu, we talked about this before, Sofia, you know, that's such a challenge for me, always has been, and I never realized why. So, you know, it's always trying to just do the best I can, you know, and thinking, okay, you know, so there's things like that, always realizing, because we're not, and I think I always have to rationalize it and going, we're human, we're not meant to be perfect. Yes, we're always trying to do the perfect things, try to do the best we can. So I think there's all that psychological care that we need to have as well, apart from our physical well-being.
Learn to forgive yourself. And one thing again, my daughter has to mirror back to me quite well, actually, is that Allah Ta'ala made you like this. So your challenges that you have, whether it's a time blindness or sexual dysfunction, getting distracted, you know, when you forget that you've got to do your salah, you delay it or so by accident. And then I'm sitting there mourning in grief, like, oh my God, what have I done? And the guilt kills me. It's so I live in most of my life in guilt, actually, because I say, I didn't do this, I can't do this. I should have done this, I could have done this. Shoulds and coulds are just like They're
Yeah.
just like gonna kill us, man. Just the shoulds and coulds enough psychologically. We need to put the shoulds and coulds to one side and say,
Yeah.
look, Alhamdulillah made us, like particularly with Ramadan, we will
Mm.
not be the same. I went to bed thinking like this. We were not made as the standardized, go for Tarawih, reading the Quran every single day, you know,
Mm.
go out in the community every single day, invite your friends and for iftar and your family. Like we were not made like that, and that is okay because Allah made us with diversity. We weren't all
Mm.
supposed to be the same.
Yes.
And we've got
Yeah.
other strengths that we need to be, that we are used for in different ways, and most of it is justice, actually, to
Yes,
uphold the
it
justice in the world, right? So if we're not good at that stuff, we're actually super good at the other stuff.
is. Yeah. How, when you were younger, did you ever say things like, I was always like, you're lying, you have no principles. That's what I would be like. Yeah.
My younger
Yeah.
one says that a lot of the time, is that you're lying, that's not fair, that's a huge motivating factor in my life. I
Mm.
can't tolerate it. I've actually had little meltdowns on the
Mm.
face of lies.
Yes.
Like I
Well, me
can't
too.
tolerate it.
Yeah, I know. That's right. As to why, and it's such a wrong. Yeah,
And it's
absolutely.
haram. It's just like we man's a haram police, right? You'd be like, oh,
Yeah.
that's haram. That's haram. Like when we're guided by like Islamic values as well, right? We've got our moral values as humans, and then we've got the on top of that, the Islamic part of it. It's just astaghfirullah. It's hilarious in our house, right? That's so haram. Like, our moral judgment here is quite funny, but it's like that's the beauty of being autistic and Muslim, I think.
Yeah.
It really is. And we're more cautious of it during Ramadan as well, because we're supposed to be more in tune, because the shaitan's away, right? So
Yeah.
we're more in tune with our own weaknesses and our own like wrongdoings that we will be prone to do. It's like,
Because
you get
that's our,
exposed
yes,
now.
it's our responsibility now. No one else
Yes.
can take any of that. Yep, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. And what sort of, I know you both touched on it a little bit in sort of in terms of like recharging when you're tired or overwhelmed and things, but is there other things specifically sort of during Ramadan that you do when you get tired and overwhelmed, or is there something that, you know, people can understand a bit better when you are tired and overwhelmed? And
I have my tasbih, so I do recite. Yeah, that helps me. The repetition of it, I think, besides anything else, and it does all in the breathing, everything. I think that all definitely helps me. So just having a quiet space, I think, just to be able to do that, and also listening to videos and things like that. So there's certain. It's funny, isn't it? It's that sensory thing. There's certain voices that I am now. They're your friends, because you know the voice so well. You don't need to be watching anything. You just want to actually hear it. And also they're imparting wisdom as well around Islam, around Ramadan, etc. So I think that always just brings me back, to
Yes.
myself. So those are the things that I tend to do, during Ramadan, just to,
And the evening time when the kids are away to bed, I will have a couple of hours in the living room just watching and I'm by myself, and that's my regulation time. But when you see my videos, the Yaqeen series, Omar Suleiman's Ramadan series for the past few years, like I'll sit and listen through them, and they really touch the soul. And his voice, his calmness, how he explains everything, it really touches the soul, and that's my iman boost that I look forward to.
Yeah, I listened to Numan Ali Khan. I have for quite a long time, and I like his work because I think it's because his background is psychology, and it really speaks to me. So I like the way that he actually puts his, actually presents all his work and things like that. And I think, yeah. So I mean, there might be things, of course, there's always stuff that you think, I'll have to go and have a look at that, and as it should be. And I think that's what it is. I like his work because it gives me the chance to question, and it's always about taking responsibility yourself, which is one of my core beliefs. Everybody should take responsibility to themselves, so yeah. So I think it is. I think it's going to the familiar as well. I think that's what it is. Voices that you know, and you know that nobody's expecting anything of you.
It's an
Because we spend
internal
a lot of time.
reflection, right? It's a conversation with yourself.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's how, I tend to look after myself. I think bring myself back.
yeah, okay. And sort of, I guess, linking to what you both said about, you watch certain specific videos and you've got your tasbih, Husna. So how do you connect with sort of your faith in Ramadan? Ramadan's all about reflection and connecting with prayer and God. How do you, sort of reflect on that and connect with God in this month, or make the time meaningful for you as an individual?
I think it's giving yourself more time to reflect, more time to learn about the Quran, more about, so therefore, and I think through all of that and understanding more by reading the Quran, a bit more about Allah as well, about, you know, what we really believe in. I think it makes your connection. So therefore, I think, and then when you pray, I think it makes it a bit more deeper because you feel like you're connecting on a more regular basis. Whereas I think throughout the year, you don't always take that time, or in the same way, you're often hurried, rushed, etc. So I think that that's what I tend to do. I think it is taking the time, much more time in terms of learning. So I think, I mean, again, I find that I think my biggest worry about having moved back here was that what if I'm not able to maintain myself and my faith and my religion, my practice, etc. when I come back, because I'd lived in a country that was all set up, you know, for Islam. You know, you could go out in the malls, there was mosques were there. As soon as the Adhan went, you could just go and pray. You know, if you didn't have, you know, a scarf with you or something, all the prayer gear is there, everything is there. So having to, and then so doing it here. So I think Ramadan in some ways is even more special because you know the life is so busy here, you know. And I think that you have to work that bit harder. So what about you, Sophia?
I'm just thinking this year I've been struggling. I think in previous years I've had some good years, I've had some bad years. I think ever since I've had children, it's been a struggle. So that's been 18 years now, right? I feel like before I had children, I really was top notch connecting, going with my friends, talking about stuff. I was in good company a lot at university. And then I would sit and read in English, my Quran in English. I still do that. Over the years, I've studied quite a lot of the Quran. For me, it's also having discussions about Islam that really helps, because that's like my favorite topic. Maths and autism and Islam are literally my three topics that I will talk about. Otherwise, you won't see me talk very much. I don't actually talk really, apart from those three subjects. So when it is that, I love having discussions, and that kind of fills me again with the whole spoons and all that, and it helps me connect as well, because it's outwardly connecting with somebody else who's like me, who's talking about Allah. And for me, it makes it more real, because it's not just inside my head, it's outside my head now. It's more physical when there's somebody else discussing Allah Ta'ala and discussing the deen. And we're challenging like understanding and knowledge. I like that, asking questions, being challenged, like you just said there, and having someone to do that with is really meaningful to me. And you don't actually have that during the year now, do you? You have more Islam discussions during Ramadan than you do 11 months of the year, and that's a bit there that people don't actually realize. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I think I've learned quite a lot from you ladies today. It's been really interesting to hear you speak about your different experiences. If we can move to sort of like, you know, reflections, what would you like to tell others about making Ramadan more inclusive? How can we sort of support the autistic community a bit more in Ramadan? I know, Sophia, we spoke about like masjids being a bit more sort of aware of like sensory sensitivities and things like that. There's always bright lights there. I mean, things like that. What other things can we do to sort of that you maybe hope will change as well to make Ramadan more inclusive for autistic individuals?
Reduce expectations, I think. And you know how we say, get always got a rosa or poor thing and all that, right? I think that kind of mentality kind of needs to go all over. Learn lessons in Ramadan for throughout the year as well, but it's know that it impacts us and understand that it does dysregulate us. The dysregulation is real with the sleep, and the whole like making iftar. Like, I know my family iftar is basic, absolute basic, normal food for the rest of the year. But that's because I as a mother of the house, I've established that ethos in my home. However, not everyone do that. You know, they may be more influenced by the culture, where they need to make like 5 different dishes or something. I think we need to be more practical and go back to basics, and listen to what actually Islam says, because that's what's going to help us as autistic people more, and then obviously general population as well. It's just going back to the basics and understand what the whole point of Ramadan was, and reducing their demands and expectations from us.
I think that this is where we're talking about culture versus religion, isn't it? Yeah.
Mhm.
And yes, culture has had such an impact on us in terms of expectations as to how things should be done. Whereas I think certainly I am always very much, I'm reading about what Islam is saying. All we need to do is this. It's not really that complicated, is what I would say, And I think, but there's all this other fluffy stuff, fluffy expectations.
Yeah,
And
Tarawih is not a sunnah, it's not a fard, it's a
yeah,
nafil. You don't have
yeah,
to go.
no,
But there's an
and no,
expectation though, right?
yeah. And I think what it is during Ramadan, everything becomes public. Everybody's lives are almost public all of a sudden. So you're under that limelight, It's like so. And I think, but certainly I like to just kind of hide away. I'm not needing everybody to be looking at me. So that side of it, to just let people be and let them be quiet and be themselves. Let Sofia wear her glasses. Don't be questioning why she's wearing it. Well, question it, but be kind, and that's okay. Sofia, I walk my cat on a harness. It's fine. My neighborhood accept that, They think it's wonderful, but they accept it. It's the same thing, any kind of behaviors. You're not hurting anybody. You're not, so even more of that feeling of being a Muslim needs to come through. That's what I would say. Yeah. And that's what would make it more inclusive, because Islam is extremely inclusive, or it is supposed to be. And it's only when we start to actually add in our bits of culture and say, this is how it's always been done, this is your tradition. Have those, but don't expect that everybody will follow that same tradition. Traditions change, and they are there to serve, to serve people, to serve the community. And if it's doing damage, then there's something wrong with it.
If it's not
So,
logical, throw it out. Islam's all about logic. Let's go
yeah,
back to that. That's why, as an autistic person, I love Islam so much, is that everything is logical, everything is rational, and anything irrational about it, it's actually not Islam, it's public culture then. You need
yeah,
to think that.
yeah.
So you're right.
Absolutely, yeah. So I agree, yeah.
Okay, any closing remarks, any closing thoughts, reflections, ladies?
I had something, but I forgot now.
I think the other thing, just looking about what advice you'd give to someone, sort of, in terms of, to support autistic people, keep it simple. That's another thing. Keep it simple. I think this is what we have challenges with, is when people are doing so many different things, and it's like, okay, I've got to decide what's going to be done here. I've got to decide what's got to be done here, all of these. So making up all these different things that, yes, to many people would be elaborately beautiful and wonderful, but to somebody who just wants to, be able to operate on the basic, and that's more than enough, because that's all we can cope with. I think that's quite important to know as well.
Yes, I had something really nice and wise to say, but now it just floated into the air and left. Damn, this ADHD brain of mine's. Yeah, I become a lot more, like I said about my son and myself, a lot more autistic and a lot more ADHD, as in we don't mask as much, right? And the autistic beings comes out and you're like, oh, so that's what you mean when you're saying you're autistic. Like it does come out a lot more, which just means that we need more support or more leniency of. There was something I wanted to say. I've forgotten now. But how can we support? Okay. Oh, I remember. Okay, I remember now. Right. When it comes to our kids going to school, it's okay that they have a lie-in. It's okay if they take a day off, if they take a morning off. It's okay, like if you were to book your annual leave during particularly the start of Ramadan, the first week, and then if you can, a couple of days or so will be needed for Eid, after Eid, because of the exhaustion, because they will be burn out afterwards as well. So I talked about that in my previous webinar with Dr. Sofia, is in transitioning into Ramadan and transitioning out of Ramadan. Transitions are always difficult for us. And when you're talking about when it's our sleep and our food, it's actually quite big. And obviously if you have family as well, and then we're managing them, it's even more harder. So really focusing on how we can help in those particular crucial points of coming into Ramadan and going out of Ramadan, where we need more of that quiet time, leave me alone charging the battery in a corner type time. That's super, super important. So it's okay if your child, your young person needs to take a day off school or needs to sleep in. It's okay for doing that because you're learning and all that. You can catch up on that. But if you're burnt out, then that's going to cost more. That'll be more days off school, and that'll be more like an illness. It could come out about that because you didn't prevent it by getting that extra couple of hours of sleep there. We're more sensitive to sleep disruption than non-autistic people. People really don't understand that. It literally closes down our rational brain, and we just come back to that carnal brain, the amygdala. It just gets activated, and the rational brain of ours just totally dies like that. We need our sleep. Yes, nutrition's already, reduced because of the fasting. And also you don't, because we're disabled, and this is the important part here, we might have medication, but even if we don't, because of the exhaustion that Ramadan causes us, the lack of sleep or the food disruption, or maybe we have restricted foods, it's okay if we didn't fast for a day or two to take a break, because that's the whole point. We are, and this is why it's so important to not run away from the word disabled, because I know some people say, oh, you're differently abled or determined and all that stuff, right? That takes away from the allowance that Allah gave us, that we are disabled, our bodies do function differently. We can take days off. We are in that criteria that if you cannot fast, you don't need to fast. You do not put burden on yourself. That's really, really important. I'm so glad I remembered that on time. But that's really, really important, is that it's okay if your autistic loved one, whether they're a child or an adult, took a day off of fasting because they needed to regulate themselves. They needed that water, they needed that food or that extra sleep. It's okay. We need to normalize this and give us that allowance. We are disabled, and that comes along with the allowances that Islam has given us.
Yeah, I guess it's that acceptance as well, and realizing that we're not, who are we to judge people and what they're going through. I was talking to a friend a few days ago, and only God can judge us. We can't, go around. People can't go around judging people, because who are they to judge us? We need to sort of accept that only God can judge us as people.
We're not going to describe a day off, Rosa, for no reason. Like how Husna said, it's so hard for us not to fast, right? That if we have to not fast, clearly there's a proper need for it. We're not Skype school kind of thing that we're just bunking it and making up stories that, oh, I'm not going to fast, I can't be bothered, because you can't see what's going on inside in my brain or in my body. So it's that like we already hold ourselves to such a high standard. We don't need other people judging us.
I know. I know, and it's even things that are like sort of trigger me actually, because there was a charity I used to give to quite a lot. Now I receive text messages every single day, and you take it personally. You know what I mean? Because you're like, this is me. Am I doing enough? And so it makes you question everything, because you have this sense of loyalty and that you should be doing everything that you can. And then you feel guilty. You're like, I have more than these people that they are talking about, and all of these things. And that aspect is another thing about Ramadan that can make it quite hard, I think, because you're doing the best you can, but it might not be good enough. And because you're already thinking that you have, you're sort of like, my standards are here. And you're like, so you have to almost justify, and that takes up even more energy.
Yes, the demand of giving charity, a lot of us may not be able to. A lot of us might be able to, but that whole executive function of physically processing that payment, even that can be actually, like, in my head is like, okay, I want to give, but it's that ability to pick up my phone, go to the website, process a payment.
All of those things. And then if it doesn't work either, sometimes I remember doing that once as well, and I was like, I'd gone through this whole process and then it wasn't going through, and I'm like that, and I kind of gave up.
Yes.
And then next day I had to send them an email or whatever and saying it's not being processed. And
but that adds to the spoons being expended. That's another thing. Is like that takes up more spoons. Is the whole giving charity? Obviously, we want to. We would probably give more than we have, to be honest, right? Because that's the way we are. We just don't look at ourselves. We just want to give and support everybody else except ourselves, right? But it's that additional demand avoidance is another one. Is like, you're asking me for something. Well, I would have done it if you hadn't asked me, right? I'm also PDA, right? Like my son, I'm also PDA. And that demand avoidance is kind of kicks in as well. It's like, I was going to do that anyway, but now you've asked me, I'm not going to do it. That's just a horrible thing to say.
Oh, no, I have a bit of that too. And that's what I mean about these text messages coming through every day. And it's almost like you're saying that I can't think of this for myself.
Yes.
It's
autonomy.
Like, yeah, absolutely. And because I have in my head a plan of the things that I need to do during Ramadan already. I already planned the things that I want to do, and that is part of it. And then somebody else putting pressure on you, you know. So yeah.
And how do you ladies sort of manage that? You know, I know we spoke about sort of how others can be understanding, but sort of tips for other autistic individuals that might be struggling with that, sort of the guilt of, you know, oh, I need to give this charity, or I'm getting these texts every day.
Unsubscribe to those messages.
Yeah.
I need to do that actually. I need to unsubscribe because it really
I
like
think
I
that's
already
what I've done as well. I'm just like, yeah, it's not worth it to have it because I know that I can go online and look myself, you know,
yes.
and make the decisions. And I think that's what it is. What started off as a good thing has become this really awful relationship. That's what it feels like, you know. And I think that because, you know, we're more likely to easily be taken in, shall we say, and things like that as well, because we don't always read if it's like people and things like that. Some salesman comes to the door, you know, somebody, you know, do you know what I mean? We're more likely to just agree to it. Yeah, that's great. I've signed up for milk being delivered to the door.
Me too.
You know
Me
what I
too.
mean? And I've been talking about cancelling, and I'm like that because I couldn't say no. I was like, yeah, I've been thinking about it. And then, of course, you're like that. I'll just do it. So, you know, so all of these things that can be so damaging to us, and we get ourselves in situations that actually, if it's because we've not always had time to process it. And the normal thing would be to just, you know, do it because other people are doing it.
Also,
So,
with the charity texts, right? You get
yeah,
charity texts about all the awful things that are happening in the world. I'm already crying myself to sleep at night, crying for everything that's happening in the world, right? And that's
yeah.
already just like stopping me from functioning normally. It's
Mm,
caused me a lot of meltdown, just the hyper empathy. And then you get
yeah,
these messages saying that your brothers and sisters are suffering here, there,
yeah,
there. It's like, dude, I am I know more than a lot of people about what's happening in the world because I'm so tuned in with my social media and looking, and it's so toxic as well for my own health, mental health,
mhm,
all the intrinsic problems and how they're connected from one end of the world to the other, and how people are suffering, and the genocides and X place, Y place, that place. Don't forget those people, because and it's like if I mention X people, oh no, I forgot to mention these people, but they're
yeah,
not less than. Oh, but they're not, for me, they're not less than anything else,
yeah.
right?
Mm,
It's that
yeah.
hyper empathy kicks in as well with the charity. It's like I'm already drained in being so upset and really feeling the trauma myself as if it's happening to my family, that
Uh-huh.
then you have these messages to say give as much, and you're reminded even further, because I'm sitting here in my privileged life, in my privileged little room in my world, right? And those
Mm,
people there during Ramadan have got the worst of the worst situations. It makes you feel even more
yeah,
worse. It's like, well, I don't deserve anything. Why am I any
yeah,
better than them?
yeah. But I think I have issues when you receive messages like, for 82 pence, you will be able to walk with our prophet.
No, yes.
Do you see what I mean? So I'm like, how can you write that? How
Yeah.
can you make that promise? You know,
I
so there, that really gets on my goat when people are starting to actually, yes, that kind of persuasion by trying to, and some people will be taken in by it, you see, and that really
yeah.
upsets me. You know, not everybody will be able to read that for what it is, and everybody will be forced into spending whatever amount of money that they'll be promised. I mean, promising someone Jannah, promising somebody that they'll be able to be with in the company of her prophet, peace be upon him. You know, all of these things, these
Mhm.
upset me, you know, and I think that, you know, and I was saying to someone, I said, I would write an email and complain about that. How can you? And they're like, that, what difference is it going to make? You know, but they should know, you know. So, but yeah, so there's all of these things during Ramadan that also come to like charity and all of these things, and they test us even further because they're things we'd already been thinking of. And sometimes, like we're saying, Sophia, not everybody is able to give as much as they would like to. Their intention is to give as much as they can, but then there's this other pressure being put on, and that's not
Mm.
something yet. And it's going coming into us, and it really has puts a lot of pressure on us, even more so than
Mm.
everyone else. So yeah.
Right.
Okay. Thank you very much, ladies. I really appreciate you taking the time, and I hope this awareness helps people as well. I think it's really important that we have these conversations. And being based in the UAE myself, I can see how, you know, the awareness is spreading and opening this conversation and how we can support autistic individuals. So thank you so much for your time, and I really appreciate that.
Well, thank you very much. That was really interesting. Great to speak with you both.
Yes.
So.
Thank you.